Kakalosh Boker Tov, we're going to be continuing on Daf Masechet Amud Aleph 69a1. So what happened was the Mishnah says, and this is a Mishnah on Masechet Amud Bet on the next Amud. The Mishnah says, Mishenatan reshuto. If somebody's going to give over his possessions, his property, in a chatzer or a mavui, in a courtyard or in a mavui, ve'otzi, and then afterwards he comes and he took out into the same chatzer or mavui, he took out his objects, right? Whether it was accidentally or purposely, or said he's going to prohibit again on the other people that are living there, right? Why? Because the fact that you annulled your property and then you took out into that property, that shows you that you undid, how do you say it? You withdraw it, right? You took away this right. You revoked those rights that you just gave over. If you gave over rights and all of a sudden you revoke that, kamarnu. You understand? These are the words of Rabbi Meir. So therefore here, the Mishnah did not say shebitel reshuto, that he annulled his reshut. It says shenatan, he gave over his reshut, which means that it completely finished over. So it's mashma, not only was he mevatel the reshut, he actually gave it as chazakah to the other people. And still, what is he saying? It's going to be considered a revocation, right? You revoked it back. So Amar Rav Yosef says, no, you have to say in the Mishnah, Ema eno oser, which means according to what we're just saying here, right, it's not going to prohibit. Meaning even though afterwards, after annulling it, he comes and he did something in it, he does not prohibit the other people from actually coming and continuing their usage in this chatzer. Right? Abaye though argues, and he says, Abaye Amar, and he says that the diuk of the Mishnah is not correct. It's not accurate. Why? Because again, what were we trying to do? We were trying to make a diuk in the Mishnah where it says natan instead of bitel. Natan means to give over. Bitel means you're annulling your own possessions, right? And that's what we were asking, because we just said the way that we finished yesterday's daf was, just to go back so you understand what's going on. The Gemara says, Amar Mor, he went and he said, remember, the Sadducee was living in the same property. So the father went and when told him, take out quickly and bring in whatever you need. Take out why before the other guy beats you, because if not, he's going to prohibit you from doing anything. So the Gemara says, says what? It comes out that when the children of Rav Gamliel are going to take it out, and then the Sadducee is going to do it, he's not going to prohibit it? Meaning, go do it first, because the second you guys do it first, then you're okay. Says, why? You're going to tell me that afterwards it doesn't prohibit? We just learned in the Mishnah on the next Amud that it does prohibit. That means even if these children of Gamliel took out their properties, and only then did the Sadducee do it, it prohibits it on them, because he revoked his rights. So Rav Yosef says, no, you have to change the Girsah Mishnah. It does not prohibit on them to start carrying their things. Abaye comes and he says, no, la kashia, it's not a question. It all depends whether they already made a chazakah or not, which means the Braita is talking about where the Bnei Mavui already made a chazakah before the Tzedoki came and took anything out. So in such a case, when they already made a chazakah, the Sadducee cannot revoke his rights anymore. Because once there was a chazakah made, there's nothing else what to do. You understand? Once the chazakah was made, that's it. However, though, if they didn't make a chazakah, then, right, it does actually help. And by the way, you should know this actually occurs also in common law as well, of the law. For example, there's a law of common rights. Let's say I have a restaurant on Harding, yeah, and all of a sudden now I'm going to start taking out my table, yeah, in the middle of the street, on the middle of the sidewalk, and I'm going to start using it. So the truth is there, it might be a little bit different because here on the San Jose side, you need a permit to wipe your nose, right? So therefore they could always say if you didn't get a permit, even if you were there for 20 years, it doesn't matter. But let's say you didn't need a permit for it, yeah? And what happens is that you're there, right? And you're using it for 3 years, 5 years. They can't come afterwards and start telling you, by the way, you're not allowed to do this. You understand why? Because once you made a chazakah, that's it. But if you're within the chazakah, and now all of a sudden they're going to come and they're going to tell you, by the way, you should know, right? You're not allowed to do this. So if you're within the time of the chazakah, you lost your rights because now you can't claim those rights anymore. Correct, Richard, or not?
More or less.
Very good. More or less. As long as it's more than the less. Fine. The Tanya, we learned in a Braita though, it says over here, Ad shelo natan reshuto, hotzi ben meshogeg b'mezid yachol levatel. Divre Rabbi Meir, Rabbi Yehuda omer b'shogeg yachol levatel, b'mezid ani yachol levatel. So 1 second. So now the Braita is going to make a difference between the shenatan that we spoke about before. Remember, natan means to give over. Bitel is that you annulled your reshut. So we learned in a Braita, what happens if you have a Jew that he forgot to make an eruv? So says the Gemara, ad shelo natan, right, reshuto, until he didn't give over. And again, here it says the word natan, he gave over his reshut to the other people. Hotzi, if he took something out afterwards, ben meshogeg b'mezid, whether it was accidentally or purposely, yachol levatel, he could be mevatel the reshut. These are the words of Rabbi Meir. Okay, so he says, right, now all of a sudden, right, he says, Rabbi Yehuda says, b'shogeg, if it was done accidentally, yachol levatel, so he could be mevatel his reshuto, right, b'mezid, but if it was done purposely, enu yachol levatel, he cannot be mevatel. Why? Because mechalel shabbat b'mezid is like a mumar, and therefore he cannot be mevatel his reshut. Rather, right, what happens is that he has to rent out, right? He has to actually come and rent out his reshut to other people. Okay, so that's what we're basically saying. That means basically if he's going to come and be mechalel Shabbat, he's like a mumad, he cannot be mevatel his reshut, and that's it. Remember, somebody that's mechalel Shabbat, that's it, right? He's like a, you know? So he says over here like this, so Misha natan reshuto ve'otzi ben meshogeg mezid oser, tivre Rabbi Meir, Rabbi Yehuda omer b'mezid oser b'shogeg and oser. Which means, first of all, the first part of the Braita was talking about, can you be mevatel or not mevatel? That's one concept. Can you be mevatel or not be mevatel? Now we're going to, is he oser or not oser? So according to Rabbi Meir, whether it was shogeg or mezid, right, he's oser. Why? Because once he took something out, he revoked the rights that he gave over, and then that's it. He was chazarbo, he retracted. Rabbi Yehuda says no. He says if it was done by mezid, you're right. If he purposely did it and he took out his objects afterwards, he revoked the rights. But if it was only accidentally, Chachamim did not make such a decree, and therefore he didn't revoke his rights. One of these words, and then the Braita says exactly what we said before, that if it was that they already made a chazakah, now it doesn't help to revoke your rights. So for example, let's say you have a field, and everyone passes through your field in order to get to the Bet Knesset. Yeah, everybody does it. So if you already forgave for such a long time that they made a chazakah, afterwards you cannot revoke your rights. You could be jumping up and down, no, but I never. Once it already passed the time of chazakah and they made a chazakah, even now if you want to come and you want to revoke your rights and say you're not allowed to pass through, you're not allowed to do something, that's it. You lost out. Okay? That's why it's always important to do a mecha'ah in the middle. Mecha'ah means that you give a rebuke or you say that I'm not mochel. And therefore, once you do that in the middle, right? So then that's already okay. You broke the chazakah. Okay? Fine.
Is there a specific time?
Well, usually for properties, it's 3 years. But it depends on certain things. The Gemara, when the Gemara speaks about different chazakot for different objects, it speaks about it. For example, what happens if it's a field that the only usage is going to be 1.5 years? So the Gemara Masechet Batra, when it talks about all the chazakot and everything, it speaks about that. How much do you need for a specific time for each thing? But usually for a field, it's like 3 years.
It has to be open and notorious use.
Yeah. Okay, fine. Amar Mor says, Rabbi Yehuda says, Belashon acheret, he comes, he says, really, be'emet, there was another language used. And remember how important it is, the connotation that we use, the choice of words that we use, because you see from one word, whether I use to give instead of to annul, they come and they want to make a whole bunch of different halachot. So the Mishnayot were very precise in their language. So therefore it comes more than a bright. And he said, Rabbi Yehuda said over in a different language. What did he say? He said, Rabbi Yehuda comes and he says that Rabbi Gamliel told his children in a different language. What was the language? Maharu va'asu tzorchechem mavui. Go quickly and do your necessities in the mavui. Al shelo techshach, until it does not become nighttime. V'yesol alechem, and then the Sadducee will come and prohibit onto you carrying there. Al manochrihu. So according to this shita, it shows you that really be'emet he's like a goy. Okay, which means he cannot be mevatel his reshut, because according to the first one, it was like a bitul reshut, right? That means basically since you used the property before he did, so now as if he would annul his reshut, and therefore you're able to use it. But now according to this, if he cannot annul his reshut, it comes out that he's a goy. So according to this, it comes out that a Sadducee is considered a goy according to the Shita. So says the Gemara, Veha anan ad shelo yotzi tanan. Says 1 second. But I thought in the Mishnah on Samech Aleph Bet, we said that according to Rabbi Yehuda, he said the name of his father, right? And when Gamliel said to his household, he said, Ma'aru b'tzutzochem ad shelo yotzi, until you don't take something out. So therefore, it's written in Fujash. It does help the concept of bitul reshut for him. So it says Gemara, Ema ad shelo yotze hayom. It's not lo yotzi means that we're talking about, right, that he shouldn't take something else. And it's not talking about ad shelo yotze, he's going to take something out of his thing. Ad shelo yotze means it doesn't go out, not you bringing something, meaning the goy, not the goy, the Sadducee bringing something out, but rather the concept is until it's the day is not going to come out. The day is not going to come out means that the day is not going to pass by. Okay? Fine. Says the Gemara, for you could answer another answer. Lakashi, that's not a question. It all depends whether a person is a mumar to be mechalel Shabbat b'tzina privately, and here it's a concept of being a mumar lechalel Shabbat b'farhesia, which means a person that's mechalel Shabbat privately, his actions are still an action. He's not a goy. He's 100% a Jew. And therefore, he could be mevatel ez reshut. However, though, a person, a Jew, that he comes and he's mechalel Shabbat befarhesia publicly, so then he's considered a mumar, and therefore he's like a goy. Right? Mamash is very, very powerful halacha. However, though, there are circumstances when exactly is this considered. I remember that when I asked, they did say that there had to be a certain sense, if there's a certain sense of an embarrassment, so if he's not considered mechalel Shabbat b'farhesia. For example, we used to have a person, right, a kohen, that he used to come to the Beit Knesset, and he was mechalel Shabbat, right? Now, one of the ways is that when he was doing Birkat Kohanim, remember that during the Beracha, you're allowed to look at the Kohanim. It's only when they start the blessing that you're not allowed to look at them. So in his back pocket, you would see his wallet. You understand? So, right? But besides that, but he wouldn't park the car right beside the synagogue. He would park it 2 blocks away or whatever it is, and he would walk there. He wouldn't come right and park right in front as if to say that here I am. He was embarrassed. You understand? So therefore, in such a case, even though he was mechalel Shabbat, he wasn't considered the mechalel Shabbat b'farhesia that we're talking about, and therefore he was allowed to get aliyat kohen. He was allowed to do birkat kohanim. He was allowed to do all these things. Yeah, why? Because at the end of the day, it wasn't mechalel Shabbat b'farhesia. It wasn't something done. Farhesia means with the audacity. I'm doing it in front of your face with a chutzpah in your face. I'm doing it and I don't care. That's a much different thing. You understand? That's a completely different halacha. Okay? Fine. Kemana zahad tanya. So says the Gemara, who does this go like? That we should learn to the bright. Mumar vegilui panim, which is the chatzuf, that's the chutzpah, right? The one that has audacity. Harez en mevatel reshut. That a mumar or somebody that has the chutzpah, he is not able to be mevatel reshut. So gilui panim, mumar ave. He says the same thing. Somebody that has a chutzpah, that is a mumar. So says the Gemara, ela mumar begilui panim, eno yochel. You're right. It's all one thing. It's not 2 separate things. A mumar, which is mechalel Shabbat b'farhesia, which means that he has a chutzpah, and he's doing it without audacity in front of you, he cannot be mevatel reshut. You understand? And there are people like that. Unfortunately, we did have someone, he used to come and he used to park right in front. So mamash, we used to be going out of the Beit Knesset, and right in front, his car was right there. He would go inside.
Did you ask him?
I never asked him. I never spoke to him. Yeah,
well,
I never.
That's not nice. You have to tell him. Maybe.
What are you gonna ask him?
Please, block away.
Okay, fine. So it says over here as follows. Okay, so Keman, who's that going like? Like Rabbi Yehuda. It's going like Shitat Rabbi Yehuda. That according to Shitat Rabbi Yehuda, he says that somebody that's going to be mechalel Shabbat b'farhesia, he cannot batel ez reshut. Okay, next. Haud denafak bechumarta demadosha. There was a person that went out on Shabbat to do reshut rabim. When he was he was wearing a sror of besamim. So he was wearing like a type of, like, if you want to call it, whether it's a necklace, a thing of spices, of perfumes. Here it says it's not a clothing and it's not a tachshit. And that's why you're not allowed to, bag of spices, right? So it says, the second that he saw Rabbi Yehuda Nasi, he covered it. So you see from here, he covered it. He was embarrassed of the Nasi. Amar, he went and he said, Kigon zeh mevatel reshut Rabbi Yehuda. He can come and be mevatel ez reshut to Rabbi Yehuda. Why? He's embarrassed about it. Meaning the fact that he's embarrassed, I mean, he was mechalel Shabbat. And he was doing it in front of everybody. But the fact that he was embarrassed in front of the rabbi, that's it. He's already okay. Okay? So Ravuna says, Ezu Yisrael Mumar. Who's a Yisrael Mumar? Zeh Chalesh Shabbatot b'Farhesia. Somebody that's Mechalesh Shabbat b'Farhesia. Amar Rav Nachman. Rav Nachman comes and he tells him, come on, who's this go like? If it's going to be like Rabbi Meir, he says that's the Chashul Ledavar Echad, Chashul L'chol Torah Kula. Somebody that's going to be Chashud, suspected to go against one of the Yisurim in the Torah, he's suspected to go against the entire Torah. Afilu be'echad, even one of them, Mikol Yisurim Shabbat Torah Nami. So even one of the other Yisurim, also it's loved of Kashabbat. Why did you say Mechalel Shabbat? So Ikar Rabbanan, and it's going to go according to the rabbis. How many of the rabbis said Chashul Devar Echad is not considered Chashul L'chol Torah Kula. Meaning if you're only suspected for one Avodah, you're not going to be suspected for everything. Okay, Masechet Eruvin Daf, 69b. Unless you're going to become a mumar for avodah zarah, so then you're going to be suspected on everything, right? So if so, why is it that somebody that's going to be mechalel Shabbat, he's considered mumar l'chol Torah kula mimanashach, even if it's not Shabbat, so you're going to be suspected for everything according to the first shita, which was Rabbi Meir, no? Rabbi Meir, or the second one, which was Rabbanan, is that on even on that, even on Shabbat, it doesn't matter. So Amram Nachman Yitzchak says Nachman Yitzchak. Liten reshut velevatel reshut. Rav Huna, that he comes and he says that a mechalel Shabbat is considered a mumar is only to do with being mevatel reshut or giving over the reshut. That he cannot be mevatel as reshut. Why? Because to do with the eruv, bitul reshut is like mechalel Shabbat, to do it like a goy, and therefore it's a very important. By the way, you should know mechalel Shabbat b'farhesia. He's got many different halachot for a lot of halachot to do with can he be a shomer. His wine is in a sense like yain nesech. There is one difference, right? Like it's worse. Yeah, exactly. Right. It's a word. What does that mean? It's not yain nesech like a goy. If a goy comes and he picks up a bottle, no problem, right, and it's open, okay, and it's not mevushal wine, he picks it up, he prohibits the entire bottle. By mechalel Shabbat b'farhesia, though, what happens is that when he pours the wine, the bottle still stays okay, but the wine is a problem. The wine is like yain nesech. So therefore, that's very important to know. So mechalel Shabbat b'farhesia, right? He's not 100% like a goy, but he's almost there. You understand? Meaning that he's got certain halachot. That means imagine you got a guy that he comes to your house, not mevushal wine. He comes, he takes the bottle, and he pours you wine. You cannot drink that wine. Powerful halacha.
And the touching it is a problem.
For mechalel Shabbat, no. The touching, no. No, also not. I'll show it to you now. Sefer kashrut. No, you're allowed to. Well, again, one more time. If he's gonna pour you the kiddush, no. But if he picked it up or he did something, that's fine. It's only that which is poured, which is a problem. Okay. So now says the Gemara, right? Just like we learned, right? If you have a Yisrael Mumar that he's keeping his Shabbat in the marketplace, meaning that he's not mechal Shabbat farhesia, he's not desecrating the Shabbat publicly. Mevatel reshut. He is allowed to be mevatel reshut. She'eno meshamer b'Shabbat reshut. If he doesn't keep his Shabbat in the shuk, eno mevatel reshut. Neshamru, but they said Yisrael notel reshut v'notel reshut uvenochri. But by a goy, it doesn't help giving over the reshut. Ad she'askid, he has to rent it out from the goy. So therefore, he cannot be mevatel the reshut. So therefore, mechalel Shabbat b'farhesia is like a goy to do with the eruv, just like a Yehuda above. So Keitzad omerlo, right? So how does he tell him? How does he say it exactly? Keitzad, right? How is he mevatel his reshut? Omerlo, he says, Reshuti kinuya lecha. My property is going to be acquired to you. Reshuti muvatelet lach, right? Or my property is annulled to you. Kana. So then he acquires it. Ben tzrich lezakot, but he doesn't have to do mamasha kinyan. I mean, he doesn't have to do a form of acquisition of, sudar or all these things, like picking up a handkerchief, meshicha, all the, no. All he has to do is word of mouth. But he has to say, my property is acquired to you, or my property is going to be annulled to you. By saying those two different forms of words, it's already enough. But you don't have to do a form of acquisition. Ravashi says, this Tana of Rav Huna, he's actually going to be so machmid that for him, Chilul Shabbat is like Avodah Zarah. And therefore, even though he says that Mumar to one of the Yisurim is not Mumar for the entire Torah, just like Chachamim, Chilul Shabbat is like Avodah Zarah. That means...
Rabbi Nachman a minute ago? Just had a minute ago somebody said.
No, Rav Nachman comes and he said, right, that's what he said at the beginning. Rav Nachman comes and he says, who is it like that? Is it like Rabbi Meir that he says that it's somebody that's going to be chashud for one thing, it's chashud for the entire Torah, so then everything's the same on anything. It could be not even kosher, eating kosher, and it's already the same. He's like a goy. But right? If he was said that, but if he said, but if it's going to be like the rabbis, which the rabbis that argue on Rabbi Meir, they were the ones that said, "Chashul ledavar echad lo avichu shel kol haTorah kula," which means if you're going to be suspected for one thing, you're not going to be suspected for everything. So comes this rabbi, Rav Ashi, and he says the same idea like Rav Nachman, but Rav Nachman says that he had to be a mumar in avodat zarah. Rav Huna is saying mechalel Shabbat is like avodat zarah.
Right.
Okay? Kedetanya, we learned in a Braita, when it says in the pasuk, "Taber bnei Yisrael matalahem," speak to bnei Yisrael and tell them, right? Adam ki yakrim mikem korban, a person when he's going to bring a korban to Hashem from the animals, from the cattle, from the sheep, takrivu korbanchem, mikem velo mikulchem, only from you, but not from all of you. What does that mean? Or not from all of you? Prat lemumar. It comes to exclude a mumar, that a mumar does not bring a korban, meaning we do not accept a korban, a sacrifice, from a mumar. So imagine you had one of these Jews that it's not just stam that he's not religious. He's anti. He's befarhesia. He's a chutzpah. You understand? That's the anti. Those ones, he would bring a sacrifice. We would not accept it. Prat lemumar. Mikem. When it says Adam yakil mikem, from you, bachem chilakti velo baumot. Which means when it says mikem, it means only by the Jews, but not by the umot haolam. Right? That means kol adam me'umot. That means any type of a goy could bring a sacrifice. But a Jew, no. Depends which type of a Jew. Okay? That's what he says.
Only certain sacrifices.
Which ones?
The goy can't bring all sacrifices.
No, for sure not.
Like a toda or something.
No, but the sacrifices that a goy is allowed to bring, any goy is allowed to bring. But the sacrifices by the Jews, right, it's only if he's not a mumar. Okay? Fine. Now it says, mina be'ema, right, from the animals. So it says over here like this, lehavi b'nei adam hadomin lebe'ema, which means when it says that, again, we're basically expounding the pasuk. And here again, obviously, that's why I read to you the pasuk, even though it's not written in the actual Gemara, it's written in the art scroll. It says, Daber b'nei Yisrael v'matalem adam ki yakriv mikem korban laHashem. So we already explained what does it mean. Adam ki yakriv mikem velo mikulchem, and bachem, which means velo baumot, which means that I only made a differentiation between you and not the goyim. The goyim, any type of goy could bring a korban. Again, the korbanot that they're allowed to bring. The Jew, it's only certain Jews, meaning not the mumar.
They don't act like animals.
Exactly. So mina be'ema la'avi b'nei adam raya domin lebe'ema, which means the reshaim, that they act like an animal. We also are allowed to come and bring a korban from them, meaning they're not any worse than animals. So you could have a rasha that he's like an animal, right? A wicked person but you're allowed to you're allowed to accept a korban from him. Why? Because he's doing maaseh be'ema.
An animal can tell. You've got
100%. That's how they know. The animal tells,
100%.
right? That's how they know. So Mikan Amru, from here we see, Mekablim korbanot miposhei Yisrael, kedei sheyachziru b'tshuva. We do accept korbanot from the Jews which they actually sin in order to come and in order that they should actually do teshuvah. Right? Chutz min mumar, except for a mumar, v'mnasech yain, or somebody that does avodah zarah, the wine for avodah zarah, v'mchalel shabbat b'atot b'farhesia. And somebody that's mechalel shabbat b'farhesia. So here you see that the mumar, obviously we're talking about the mumar that's doing it, like the audacity. And also mechalel shabbat b'farhesia is the same thing.
You tell me a man could be sleeping, committing adultery publicly and it still can do it? It's hard to understand.
Still could do what?
You could sacrifice.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah?
Not a simple matter.
You have to know, Richard, that you have to understand that, like the following. Do you know that in the halakha, there's a concept brought down about... So says the Gemara, Hagu v'kashe, this in itself was a question. Amarta, you told me, mikem velo kulchem, that it's only from part of the Jews and not all the Jews, le'osiyat mumar, to take out the mumar. V'hadatani, then you taught me, v'kavlin korbanot, he said you're allowed to accept the korbanot from all the different sinners of Israel. So says the Gemara, halakashe, it's not a question. Reisha v'mumar lechol haTorah kula, the Reisha is talking about the entire Torah, meaning if you have a mumar from all the Torah, that means he doesn't keep anything, and he's doing it b'chavana, no, you don't give him anything. He's mamash like a goy. Mitziata, the middle case, is only a mumar for one thing. So mumar for one thing, that's going to be okay. Again, what does it mean? It's not that it's okay. It's just that we're not going to completely excommunicate you for that. You have to remember that every single Jew, as long as it's not about zarah, right? Remember, every single Jew, right, and every single human being has their soft point, right? That means we have to work on ourselves. That's why we're here. So it could be that maybe for one person, his soft point might be lashon hara. And it's written in Furash in the Torah. There's a kalala. There's 17 averot on lashon hara. There's this. But what? But that it could be the majority of people are speaking lashon hara. Then talking in the Beit Knesset. It could be, many things. Ribit, interest, taking interest on loans.
Yes.
It could be tzniut. It could be many different things. You understand? Immorality could be many things. So therefore, anything, if it's going to be on the entire Torah and he's doing it with a chutzpah, that's mumar lechol Torah kula. However, though, if it's just going to be just on one thing, so again, if it's a breach which is against everybody, so then that's like mechalel Shabbat b'farhesia. Even though the mechalel Shabbat b'farhesia now is a lower level than even the married out, because again, in the diaspora, it was much less of a concept. Meaning, when a person was mechalel Shabbat in the diaspora, it's not like that we're talking about that you're in Eretz Yisrael, you know exactly what to do, and I'm bechavana, I'm anti. No. Half these people, they weren't okay. He's mechalel Shabbat. He didn't. It's not that he's against Hashem. They had the munah, they had everything. So now it actually even changed, right, in how it is. So ema seifa. Let's see the seifa. Chutz mina mumar v'menasech yain. The seifa says, except for a mumar or somebody that does nisuch yain, which is avodah zarah. Hi mumar. What mumar are we talking about? Mumar lechol Torah hainu reisha. If it's a mumar for the entire Torah, that's already the reisha. If it's going to be the mumar just for one thing, so then you have a question in the middle part. So what are we talking about? This is what it means to say. Except for mumar lenasech yain, cholel shabbatot faresia. Alma avodah zarah v'shabbat ki hadad dinin shoina. So we prove from here that avodah zarah and Shabbat are the exact same. So somebody that's going to be mechalel Shabbat farhesia, he's like doing avodah zarah. It's the exact same. There's no difference. Okay, very good. Says a Mishnah. Until here we're clear. Very good. We already did an hour. It says anshe chatzer sheshachach, right? Echad mehen velo irev. If you have people in a courtyard where one of them forgot to do the eruv and he didn't do an eruv, so now what's going to happen? Right? So it says over here, even if he's going to be vatel his reshut, right? Beito, velo erev beito, asur milachnisu milotzi, lo velahem. So even if he's going to be vatel his reshut, and then they are allowed to come and start carrying and everything, his house, the one of the mevatel, you're not allowed to bring anything inside of his house or take anything outside of his house for him, right? And for everybody else in the chatzer as well. Okay? Shelahem, but their houses, mutarim, lo velahem. So from their houses, it's permitted for him to take something out of their house into the courtyard or in, and for them. Okay, so everyone clear. Meaning, right, let's say I forgot to do the eruv, and everybody here, right, whether it's me, right, Alberto, Simon, Alusha, Barak, everyone's there, right? So everyone's here, and what happens is that all of you guys, you told me, what about you? I forgot. Okay, I'm vatel my reshut. Once I'm vatel my reshut, perfect, I'm allowed. Everybody could use the reshuyot, but for myself or for every one of you, you're not allowed to bring into my house or take out of my house. Because once I was mevatel my reshut, that's it. I'm not allowed to. But from your houses, every single one of your houses, you're allowed to take in and out, and I'm allowed to take in and out from your house, meaning from your property. Okay, but my property, no, because I was mevatel my reshut. Okay, now it says the Gemara, natnu lo reshutan. If now he was not mevatel the reshut, but rather he gave his reshut over. So it says over here, only reshutan b'chatzer, but not actually houses. So hu mutar v'hen asurin. So now it becomes opposite. He becomes permitted to be mevatel, to be mevatel from the house to the chatzer, right? Because his house and chatzer is one property, but not for them. But them, they become prohibited.
That's
right?
the second case.
That's the second case. That is the flip case. Why? Because all of a sudden now, natnulo reshutan, they gave their reshut to him. So since they gave their reshut of the chatzer to him, so now he's allowed to do it, but not them. Okay?
Him. It says two can do it, but one can't. No, two cannot do it, but one.
No. I'm before the two. Before the two. I'm part of the Mishnah before the two.
Okay.
You're the next part. One more time, right? People forgot. One person forgets in the entire chatzer. So now, if he's annulling his reshut, so now what happens is when he's going to be annul his reshut, his house is still prohibited to bring in and out for him and for everybody.
So he can't eat
their
his dinner.
houses.
His dinner he cooked, he can't eat it no more.
Why? If he's inside
He
his
can't
house.
go in his house. He can't.
No,
No,
he's
he
allowed to go
cannot
in. You
do-
cannot take out or
Out
bring
of his
in.
house.
Not himself. You're always allowed to leave your house and go into your house. We're talking about transport. I'm not allowed to take something out of my house or inside my house. And the same with them. It means even though they did that remove, they're not allowed to bring into my house or out of my house. However, though, what about the opposite? What happens if they gave him their reshut?
They
So-
forgot to make it, and he made it.
No, the opposite. He forgot, but they gave to the one that forgot. That's what it says here. אבל אם שאר בני החצר נתנו לשוכח רשותן בחצר,
Oh, okay.
then who mutar, he's permitted and they are
Well,
prohibited.
Okay.
You understand? I mean, again, it's always one person forgetting. But the question is, who annulled the reshut to who?
So
If
the
it was
rest of
he
that
annulled the
space.
forgetter, that annulled his reshut to everybody else. So everybody else is allowed to bring in and out, but into this guy's house, he or everybody else is not allowed to bring in and out. If it was that they gave their reshut to him, so now he's allowed to bring in and out of his house, but they're not allowed to bring in and out of their houses, or he's not allowed to bring in and out of their houses. Okay, next case is what you said before. Hayush Shnaim, if there were two people that forgot the Eruv, Osrin Zelzeh, so then they're going to prohibit on each other, which means with each one, it comes out that they're reshut, so therefore they prohibit on each other. Right, right, we continue in the Mishnah. She'echad noten reshut v'notel reshut, right, because one person could give. What happened? Yeah, because it says over here, Echad, one person, noten reshut v'notel reshut, shnaim notrim reshut v'notlim reshut, which means one of them could give over the reshut, and one of them could actually receive the reshut. He could take it. But two people, right, either they could give, but they cannot take. Okay, that means two people cannot receive the property of everybody else, but two people could give over the property. Okay, one person could give over, one person could receive. Capish? That means when you have two people, it makes sense. If we're two people, let's say John Jack and myself, we forgot. You understand? So we cannot now come and accept whether it's from Benjamin, Jackie, Alberto, Simon, Alush, right, Barak, or Richard here, right? We cannot accept it because we're two different individuals or two different identities. So we cannot accept it from both of them. But I could give and he could accept, or vice versa, right? But we cannot, or we could both give, but we cannot both accept. Okay, that's what the Mishnah says. From when are you permitted to come and to give over the reshut? That Shammai says it has to be done during the day. But Hillel says even if nighttime, that means even after Knisat Shabbat, that Shabbat enters, the onset of Shabbat, you're still allowed to give over the reshut. If somebody gives over his reshut, and he took something out, this is what we just mentioned at the beginning of the day today, right? Whether it was per accident or purpose, that is said, it's going to prohibit. These are the words that it mean. If Yudah says b'mezid, it's going to prohibit, but not b'shogeg. B'shogeg and osed. Says the Gemara. Everyone with me? Gemara until you're clear.
So far.
Very good. Baruch Hashem. So says the Gemara, Beitohu de'asur ha'chatzero sharia. It says one second. What did we say in the beginning of the Mishnah? The beginning of the Mishnah, we said one more time. A person forgot to do a eruv. He's mivatel his reshut to everybody else. What do we say? You're not allowed to bring into his house, whether it's himself, he cannot bring into his house in and out, or everybody else cannot bring into his house in and out. But says the Gemara, chatzero, it's permitted. Meaning I could bring into his chatzer or out of his chatzer. It's only his house that I'm not allowed to. So says the Gemara, heichi dami. What's the case then? If he was mivatel his reshut in the chatzer, why is the house going to be asur? If he wasn't mevatel, chatzero amay sharia. So why is it going to be permitted then? So says the Gemara, what are we dealing with? He only was annulling the reshut of his chatzer, but not of his house. And therefore, Kasav Rabbanan, the rabbis hold, if you only give over your chatzer, you're not mevatel your house. But the person could live in a house without the chatzer. Meaning there does exist. Even nowadays, you do see that there's certain people that live, whether it's going to be in apartment buildings or townhouses. Okay, townhouses, many times they still have a little tiny chatzer, but like a little tiny courtyard in the beginning or whatever it is. But for example, let's say an apartment building. You live in an apartment building, you don't have a chatzer, you don't have a courtyard. You open up the door of your apartment building, that's already public domain. It's not your domain. You understand? So therefore, right, that people will live in there. Next part of the Mishnah, v'shelahen mutarin lo v'lahen. However, though in their houses, him or anybody else is allowed to bring in and out of their houses because he annulled his property to him. My time out, what's the reasoning? It says because he's considered like an oreach. Okay? So he's like a guest. And therefore, since he's like a guest, he's allowed to actually use their properties without any permit, without any problem. Okay, next, the second case. What happens if they gave to the one that forgot? They gave him their reshut. Hu mutar, so he's permitted in and out, but they are prohibited. So says the Gemara, why don't we say the same thing? Why aren't they considered guests to him? That also they're guests, so they should be able to do it. So says the Gemara, 1 to 5 is a guest. 5 to 1 is not a guest. Meaning you are a guest as one person coming to that, you're a guest. But if you're the majority, you're not a guest. You understand? Meaning that I remember that this once actually happened to us.
Doing an invasion.
Yeah, an invasion. I remember there was a thing that they wanted to come, and they wanted to come to the, how do you call it? They wanted to come over, right, to the Bet Knesset, to use the Bet Knesset. So he said, yeah, be our guests. Okay, we're coming with, I think it was 40 people. So hold on, 1 second. That's not guests anymore. You understand that? You're coming and taking over. That's not a guest anymore. Guests is a few people coming over. But if you're gonna come and bring your entire army with you, that's not called guests.
Abusive.
Yeah. Okay. So says the Gemara, right? Shemamina, we learn from here. Mevatlin v'chozrin mevatlin. We learn from here that a person can be mevatel, and then again it could be mevatel. You remember this concept? The concept is that, for example, I could annul my reshut. I could now, right? And then all of a sudden you're going to annul your reshut, and now we flip. So you're allowed to do that. So says the Gemara, Hachi Kamar, no, you can't do such a thing. He says, why? Natnu lo reshutan mi'ikara hu mutar v'nesurin. If he gave his reshut from the beginning, so he's going to be permitted, and they are going to be prohibited. But then it doesn't flip. You understand? That means it's from the beginning. It's not that you can now switch in the middle or other. No. Once it was done, it was already done. Okay, next part of the Mishnah. Hayushayim, there were two people. So they prohibit each on each other. So it says, obviously, Pshita. So it says, what are we dealing with? Right? One of them again came and he annulled it to his friend. So I would have thought to say, it should be permitted. We come teach you. When at the time when he was annulling, the other person was not permitted to use the chatzer of himself either. So therefore it doesn't help. Which means that at the time when I'm going to annul my reshut, it has to be that you're permitted to use that chatzer. If at the time that I'm going to annul it to you, you also were prohibited in using the chatzer, it does not help the fact that I annulled it to you. Okay? Then it says, she'echad noten reshut. The one person could give reshut, right? Hatud lamali. Why do we need to say it again? So it says the Gemara, inoten, if it was because he gave Tanina, we already learned it. Minotel, if it was that you took it, Tanina, we also already learned it. That means the noten v'notel, which is basically giving over or taking the reshut, we already learned this. So it says the Gemara, Seifa Tzichle, we needed it for the Seifa, which is basically the Shnayim Notrim reshut, that two people are able to give over the reshut, but not to accept it. So it says the Gemara, Hanam Chit, it's also obvious. So it says the Gemara, Ma'udatim, I would have thought to say, Ligzor, we should make a decree, Dilma Atili Vetule Eluhu, that maybe one of them is going to annul it to the second one, and then they could make a mistake that it actually helps. And we just said that one annulling to the second one doesn't help. Kamashmalan comes to teach you that we didn't suspect such a thing, and therefore it's going to be permitted. And we stop by the two dots. Bezrat Hashem, we continue on Sunday.